We're going to talk about operations with monomials. A monomial is just a single term instead of having a couple things added together. This is just a term. It can be a number, so it can be like 4. It could be a variable, it could be like x squared, or it could be the product of one or more variables or one or more numbers. So it could be 4 times x squared, which is 4x squared. It cannot have negative exponents. And the exponents have to be integers. It can't be fractions or anything like that. So a monomial, when you multiply two things, here we're going to do 3 times 2, and then we have x squared, which is really an x times an x, and an x cubed, which is x times x times x. So we got 3 x's and 2 x's. When you multiply all those together, 3 times 2 is 6. So we have 6 here, and then x times x times x times x times x, that's 5 x's, you get x to the 5th. Okay, now you don't want to write out this every single time, so there's a pattern that goes along when you're multiplying monomials. The coefficients, the numbers in front, you're going to do the normal operation, so you're multiplying the coefficients. So 3 times 2 is obviously 6. But if we look at the variables, the exponents on the variables, instead of having to write this out like this, you could do 2 plus 3 to get 5. So we're going to add the exponents when we multiply. So here we have x squared y cubed times x to the 4th y to the 5th. Our coefficients are invisible ones. Okay, so 1 times 1 is 1, so we'll have one term here. X squared times x to the 4th, we're going to add those, so 2 plus 4 is 6, so we get x to the 6th. And then here we have a 3 on the y and a 5 on the y, so 5 plus 3 is 8. So we get x to the 6th, y to the 8th. And that's it. Here, we're going to multiply again. You multiply 4 times 2 is 8. That's your coefficient. We don't have another a term, so that a cubed, an a variable, so that is going to stay in a cubed. When we multiply here, you get b to the negative 3rd times b to the 7th. Negative 3 times 7 is a negative 21. But since it's a negative exponent, we have to put it in the denominator. So b to the negative, and it becomes a positive. So b to the 21st goes in the denominator. What did I just do? We're going to redo that. Same as Elmore, you just told us to add it, not multiply it. So we're going to try that again, and we're going to add it. You do a negative 3 plus 7. What's negative 3 plus 7? That's a positive 4. So you get 8a cubed b to the 4th. And that's your answer. Sorry about that. Maybe something looked funny. Okay. Now here, we're going to, since you're multiplying these two terms, we're going to add the exponents. So a negative 2 plus 7 is going to be 5, so you have m to the 5th. Here you have 3 plus a negative 5. That's going to give you a negative 2. If you get an exponent, so you have p to the negative 2nd, you can't leave it a negative exponent. You have to move it to the denominator. So you have m to the 5th over p squared, and that's your simplified expression. When we're dividing, okay, this is like 4 over 2. We have x to the 4th, so we have 4 x's up here. And then we have 3 x's down here. Okay, 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay, and then your x's cancel. We have 3 x's that cancel, and we're left with an x to the 1st. Okay, if you wrote it out every time, that would work. Or you could take the exponents and you could subtract them. 4 minus 3 is 1. Okay, and then the coefficients, you always do the normal operation. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. So when dividing variables, you're going to subtract their exponents. So here, we're dividing these two variables, 9, and the exponents, we're going to subtract them. So 9 minus 5 is 4, so you get x to the 4th, and we're done there. Okay. Here you have 9 over 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And then we're going to do 2 minus 10. 2 minus 10 is a negative 8, so that means we're going to have an n to the negative 8 exponent. But we don't want to keep it negative. We would like it to be positive, so we're going to instead divide by n to the 8th. This last one, 2 over 10. 10 doesn't go into 2, but this fraction reduces to 1/5. Then we're going to subtract 2 minus 7 is a negative 5, so that x is going to go in the denominator, x to the 5th. And then 4 minus a negative 3. When you subtract a negative, you add the opposite. So this is going to be 4 plus 3, which is 7. So our y exponent is going to be 7. So we have 1y to the 7th over 5x to the 5th. Okay. Now we're going to look at raising to a power. When you raise something to a power, this is the same as 2x cubed y to the 5th times 2x cubed y to the 5th, which means if you're multiplying, you're going to multiply the coefficients. So 2 times 2 is 4. And then you're going to add the exponent. So 3 plus 3 is 6. And 5 plus 5 is 10. So you get 4x to the 6th, y to the 10th. But if you raise something to the 3rd power or the 8th power, you're going to have to rewrite it 3 times or 8 times. So that could get monotonous. When raising a variable to a power, you see a pattern between these exponents and what my answer was. Okay, this 2 is you could multiply the exponents. 2 times 3 is 6, and 2 times 5 is 10. And that's the pattern with the variable. So when raising a variable to a power, you can multiply their exponents. So here we have, and remember, coefficients are always going to do that operation, the normal operation. So we're going to cube 3. 3 cubed is 27. And then we're going to multiply the exponents, do the trick there. So 3 times 4 is 12, so we get x to the 12th. And 2 times 3 is 6, so we get y to the 6th. And that's our expression there. When you're raising a fraction to a power, you're going to distribute the fraction to the top. So 5x cubed squared over y to the 4th squared. So then you can do what we just talked about. We have to square 5 because 5 is a coefficient, so 5 squared is 25. And then you're going to multiply the exponents. 3 times 2 is 6, so you get x to the 6th over y. You have a leading coefficient of 1. 1 squared is 1. And you multiply the exponents. 4 times 2 is 8. Okay, last one. First, we have to square a negative 2. A negative 2 times itself. So a negative times negative is a positive, so that's a positive 4. Then you're going to multiply the exponents. 2 times a negative 8 is a negative 16, so that would be x to the negative 16th. But we don't want a negative, so we're going to put the x in the denominator, or we're going to divide by x to the 16th. And then 5 times 2 is 10, so y to the 10th. Okay. Now we're going to practice them on the back. If you want to go ahead and get a head start and practice them, and then I'll work through all these on the back. Here we're multiplying, so we got 2 times 5 is 10. You add the exponents, so you get x to the 11th, y to the 7th. Here, you multiply all the coefficients, so 4 times 2 is 8. We have, we're adding exponents, so 3 plus 4, so that's a to the 7th. And then on B, you have 3, a negative 2, so 3 plus negative 2 is 1. Plus 7 is 8. Let's look at this one. 2 times negative 7 is a negative 14. You can have negative coefficients in the numerator, no problem. It's the exponents that you want to be careful of. Negative 3 plus 5 is 2. So m to the 2nd. And 3 plus a negative 6 is a negative 3. So we'd have p to the negative 3rd. But we don't want negative exponents, so it's p cubed. Okay, that's multiplying. When you're when you're dividing, you subtract. So here we're going to subtract exponents. So 3 minus 8 is a negative 5. So you'll have an x to the negative 5th. But instead of it being a negative exponent, you can put it underneath or divide by it. And we're going to divide 1. So 1 over x to the 5th. Here, 2 goes into 12 6 times. And you subtract. 7 minus 4 is 3. So we get 6y to the 3rd. Here, 5 over 15 reduces to 1 over 3. You can keep the negative in the denominator, or you can put the negative out in front. So we have negative 1/3. 5 minus 2 is 3, so we got x cubed. And 3 minus 7 is a negative 4, so you want your y to the 4th to be in the denominator. This one, we have 7 x to the 5th y cubed raised to the negative 2nd. So this means 7 to the negative 2nd is 7 squared, which is 49, but as a fraction. 1 over 49. So the 49 is going in the denominator, the one's going on top. Then you're multiplying your exponent, so negative 2 times 5 is a negative 10, so that's an x to the negative 10th. We'll change it to a positive and put it in the denominator. And then negative 2 times 3 is y to the negative 6th. And we'll put that y to the 6th in the denominator, so we'll divide by that y to the 6th. Okay, here you're distributing that exponent, so we got 8a to the 5th, and we're going to square it, over 2b cubed. We're going to square it. 8 squared is 64. A to the 5th squared, you multiply those and you get a to the 10th. Over 2 squared is 4, and you get b to the 6th. When you look at that, you notice that 4 goes into 64. Okay, 4 goes into 64 16 times, so that reduces to 16, a to the 10th, but that b to the 6th that's still in the denominator. So there's that one. And the last one, we're going to square a negative 3, which means a negative 3 times itself is a positive 9. 2 times 6, you multiply the exponent, so 2 times 6 is 12, so you get s to the 12th. And then 2 times a negative 10 is a negative 20, so you get t to the 20th, a positive 20 in the denominator.